What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be looking actually at the Open Ultra League because I am already over the Spring Cup. I also apologize, I am going to be kind of whispering during this video, so I hope you enjoy ASMR because I have to be a little bit quiet. But that being said, today we're looking at GLISCOR. We're also pairing it with Shadow Feraligatr, which is a staple of the Ultra League meta, or every meta really, and then Alolan Sandslash, the non-Shadow. With Shadow Claw we're taking a look at. The reason we have GLISCOR and Sandslash in the back for this team is I was seeing a lot of double poison ABB lines, so a steel and a ground will always deal with those poisons, and there's also a rise in mud slappers to deal with those poisons, so GLISCOR has play into both. So without further ado, let's take a look at some battles. Okay, right away in the lead we have a Shadow Galarian Weezing. So we are actually going to instantly get out of this matchup because we have two better answers in the back. That isn't always how I played this matchup. In fact, I think I played a few of them out. That being said, this one chips with a Brutal Swing, and then they come in with a Gliscor. Now, after one Brutal Swing, that actually doesn't quite put me in Aqua Jet range, I believe. I will just barely survive this. Will I make it to another Aerial Ace? I do, so that is super clutch, but I think they can survive this as well, so my opponent might no shield, which they do, but that's okay, because that puts them in Shadow Claw farm down range, and now we have a 3 Shadow Claw head start, so we can just look to CMP tie them on their next Brutal Swing. My opponent decides to over farm, knowing that a Brutal Swing would not do very much damage here, but they have exposed their moveset. They are almost assuredly on Brutal Swing plus Sludge, but they do bait with a Brutal Swing and they catch onto a Gastrodon. Now this is actually really nice for us because we do not want our Sandslash to see this Gastrodon. So how are we going to play this out? We're going to over farm, hope that they throw an alignment, which they do, which is super clutch. It's just a body slam, and now we'll be able to make it to back-to-back Hydros, so my opponent cannot shield this. And they do actually let that go. One in the move allows us to get to one more Hydro, and because we know they're not on overheat, we can just instantly come in with our Sandslash, and my opponent resigns the match immediately. Okay, into the next match. Golurk on the lead. This is a great lead. I say great lead, but it's pretty similar to the Marowak matchup in the Great League, where they can kind of just 2-shield through you if they want. However, at least they are taking super effective from the Shadow Claw, so we're actually doing about the same amount of damage. Fortunately, we do have a pacing advantage in this matchup, so we are able to get to 2 Hydros before they're able to get to back-to-back Shadow Punches, which means we can grab 2 shields in this matchup, and then we can actually just let this go, because now a lot of Golurk lead teams do not have an answer to Gliscor up energy, so I just come in with Gliscor, I get a full Sand Attack farm down and hardly take any damage, and they come in with a Typhlosion. They try and go for an Earthquake catch onto their Cobalion, which also would have been super effective. So I'm not really sure about that, but they did wait a few turns there, and that actually allows me to get a Earthquake connect and a full Sand Attack farm down before they can make a Stone Edge, which means I'd come out with an Earthquake for their Typhlosion, so they just resign the match. Pangoro lead. So this is a very tough lead because we obviously have an okay answer in Gliscor, but we are kind of ABA weak to it. My only play here is always calling the bait that they're not going to go for the close combat. Fortunately, I'm right, they do just send a Night Slash. So I am going to full send a Hydro. Well, full send, it's my cheapest move. And if they've played with the CMP tie, I will shield back because I know I can probably grab that second shield from my opponent, and then they are shields down potentially against a Gliscor. Up energy in the end game would not be good for him. But they actually let that go, and then they're going to do the same thing. They're going to play with the CMP tie, so at this point, I'm just going to let this go. They might make it to another Night Slash against my Gliscor, but that is fine. I can just get a full Sand Attack farm down. A Night Slash, especially non-boosted, will not do much, and we are able to get that farm down. Now, what is in the back? Yeah, that's right. Pangoro is always paired with poisons because that core of Pangoro plus poison is super strong. So that's why we kind of just stayed in that matchup. I tried and go for a Scald catch, but I'm unsuccessful, but they have a Galarian Weezing in the back, so they were double poison in the back, so unfortunately for my opponent, they have absolutely nowhere to run against a Steel and a Ground. However, they did farm up to a potential overheat here. Are they going to full send it? No, they actually are just on Brutal Swing, which means I can just very comfortably let this go. Not that I have shields remaining anyways, but I can let this go for an overfarm, just KO with an Ice Punch at this range. An Ice Punch will be enough to KO the Galarian Weezing, and now I'll come out with Energy Loaded for this Tentacruel. It will not be enough to KO, but I might even be able to outpace or potentially catch a move. I know one Scald will not be enough to KO. It's just about will they outpace me to the next Scald. They will not. It is a CMP tie. Drill Run to the Scald, and Drill Run from this range KOs the Tentacruel, so we're able to take that win. Forehead exposed. Regirock in the next match. This is an okay lead because obviously Hydros are super effective. Regirock is bulky as hell, but we'll probably be able to survive a Stone Edge too. But we also can catch a Stone Edge because that looks cooler, so why not? And that is only neutral on the GLISCOR because of the ground typing. The ground flying typing, but they actually full send all of their energy, and then they come in with a Dragalge. Now normally, actually make it to an Earthquake, so this is huge. So if they let this connect, this will basically one-shot, and if I was the Shadow, it would have, but they do have enough for an Aqua Tail, so I actually just come in with my Feraligatr because I know I can get the Shadow Claw farm down, eat a resisted Aqua Tail for breakfast, and then they have a Shift Tree in the back, so now this is tough. Fortunately, I can live a foul play no problem, so I can let the first one go, and then I can just farm up and go for these super effective Ice Punches. I just have to be wary of a catch. However, they do shield the Ice Punch and they throw an alignment, which is huge because that means I can probably get to 2 more Ice Punches before they can get to a third, even if they bait, which they do. And they are going to shield that up, and you're going to find out right here why they are shielding absolutely every super effective move. It's because Shift Tree is classy as hell. They come back in with the Regirock, they resign the match, and we're able to take that win. Weezing on the lead. So let's see if I play this one out the same way I did the last one. So it looks like I'm staying in this matchup, and this is more typical. Usually what I'll do is I'll go for a catch. No, I'll probably go for like, I'll play out first charge move, so like Hydro to Sludge, and then if they're in order to outpace, they have to throw one before, like right as they get to the move with the Sludge. So I usually try and catch the second charge move. In the next one, they've got a Jellicent that comes in, and I can actually stay in this matchup because I have 2 answers to poisons, and they throw, which is pretty incredible because they were worried about getting Shadow Claw farmed down. But now all that does is it gives me a shield advantage and an energy lead on my Sand Slash. And we know they can't come back in with their poison, so it is a Skeleturge in the back, which is absolutely terrible. We throw 1 Shadow Claw and defer the Incinerate damage onto my GLISCOR. They snipe with their Weezing, but I believe this is only a Brutal Swing, and it is, and I can live that very comfortably. They're already at another Brutal Swing, but we're going to let this go. We are saving our shields in this matchup. Now we're going to full send the Earthquake because we do not want to bait here. We undercharge it. We get a perfect undercharge, so they're not able to make another Brutal Swing. This forces them to throw their energy. This time I am going to shield this up because I do want to get to this Earthquake. If I get to this Earthquake, I can grab the last shield from my opponent or take them out if they try and call it bait, but they do they do put up that last shield, but that means I can outpace my opponent to a move, so I can go throw 2 Shadow Claws, throw the Drill Run. This is super effective damage, and a Alolan Sand Slash is a Skeleturge counter confirmed. Sorry, opponent. Cobalion on the lead in the next match. This is a very neutral lead. However, Cobalion does have a slight pacing advantage, assuming they go straight Sacred Sword. If they throw as soon as they get to the move, that is good timing. So I'm surprised my opponent is over farming here, maybe expecting a catch, but I did not go for that. And they do eat a Hydro. However, now I'm gonna wait the turn, get a catch here, and catching a resisted Sacred Sword onto my GLISCOR, and because I waited the turn to catch, that means I can sneak a sand attack through on the catch, which means I'm able to outpace the Feraligatr by exactly 1 turn. However, my opponent does overfarm pretty nicely here, and they do get off the Hydro Cannon to KO my GLISCOR. I'm going to come back with my own Feraligatr, go for the Hydro to at least get this Feraligatr low into the red, and we do that perfectly. And now we're saving 2 shields for a Lowland Sandslash. We can probably get the Shadow Claw farm down here, and if we can, that'll be huge because now we have 2 shields and an Alolan Sandslash against the world. They do still have that Cobalion, but I'm not expecting them to shield this low HP Cobalion, so I'm full setting the drill run, but they do. So that clues me into what might be potentially in the back. They also overfarm here and allow an entire Shadow Claw in for free. At this point, they're 1 away from making another move, so I'm forced to throw my energy. Ice Punch will not connect. What is that Pokemon in the back that is so weak to Sandslash? We're about to find out. It is a Runerigus, and I'm assuming this Runerigus is not on Brutal Swing because they probably would have thrown as soon as they got to the move, but they did not. If they're on Rock Tomb Shadow Ball, they're going to get outpaced, and we actually, with the perfect overfarm, are able to make it to back-to-back Ice Punches, Shadow Claw farm down the Cobalion, and we're able to take that win. Golurk again on the lead, so we're going to play this one out the exact same way unless they switch into a Lickilicky. So this time we're just going to go for a Hydro, and then after the Hydro we're going to throw 1 and try and go for a catch of a Body Slam on my Sandslash, but we're unsuccessful. If they have Earthquake, this will hurt, but I can survive 1, but it is just the Shadow Ball, so that is super nice, but they're already at a second Shadow Ball. I am forced to let this go. They're not going to be able to farm me down, which is great, and I am just going to go for double Ice Punch because of the Hydro Connect. However, double Ice Punch looks like it's actually not quite enough to KO. However, I can make it to a Drill Run here. Is this enough to KO the bulky Lickilicky from this range? It's not, and unfortunately I kind of just have to let this go. I don't need switch against a Golurk with a GLISCOR and a Feraligatr, and this would give me a really nice Shadow Claw farm down. So my opponent makes a really nice play, and they pivot into their Mandibuzz, and then they shield an Ice Beam. So we are in a bit of a tricky situation here. They do full send the Dark Pulse. I can eat any 1 move. The problem is I can't take 2, so I need to start using my shields. And using shields on a low HP Feraligatr is probably going to clue my opponent into the fact that I am very weak to the Mandibuzz in the back. Obviously sand attacks are resisted and they're not quite an Aerial Ace range, so I have to shield this back up. I need to at least grab that last shield and at least Shadow Claw farm them into a range where an Aerial Ace will be enough to KO plus the sand attacks. But fortunately my opponent actually lets that go. They do not read my team correctly, and now we can put GLISCOR onto the Golurk. And GLISCOR can go for Shadow Punches here, but 2 will not KO. And unfortunately for my opponent, these Mud Slaps are double resisted and they're doing absolutely nothing to GLISCOR. You're going to see a second Shadow Punch connect here, and because we were able to get the bait correct, we can full send the Earthquake here. They try and go for a catch as soon as we got to it, but we are able to hold on to our energy, make it to the Earthquake. This is super overkill, but it does connect on the Golurk, and we're able to take that win. Okay, into the next match. We've got a Tentacruel on the lead, and this is a pretty bad lead, so we're instantly going to get out into our GLISCOR. The problem with Tentacruel is obviously they're going to outpace. Oh, excuse me. I should be asleep in bed right now. That is what's happening, but I am filming a video instead. They actually make a really nice catch onto their Gastrodon, but unfortunately for my opponent, these sand attacks plus 2 Earthquakes is actually enough to KO a Gastrodon from this range if they're not like rank 1 IVs, and my opponent is not, so that actually connects. We flip switch and they're forced to throw their energy because these sand attacks are adding up and they're not going to be able to poison jab farm me down, which means now I can align my Sand Slash, and even though I get 1 turn lag when I come in, I can throw my move as soon as I get to it, and because they were energy dry, I'm able to outpace, which means I actually don't lose that charge move or that fast move in the long term. They do shield that up, even though I will always be able to outpace here. So now I'm reading that they're weak in the back. So what I do is I farm up and I play to the CMP tie with my drill run to their Scald, and they shield again. So now I'm definitely double shielding, because what is in the back that is so weak to the Alolan Sandslash? It is a Weezing. The only unfortunate thing here is my attack has been double debuff. So now I don't think 2 drill runs will KO. So I actually reset. I know a Brutal Swing is not enough to do any meaningful damage to either my Sandslash or my Feraligatr. They do actually go straight Sludge, but now I'm able to overfarm, go for a Hydro, assuming this will do huge damage, and it does, and they're also forced to throw their energy, which is nice. Now I just have to be wary that they do not make an Ice Punch catch onto their Tentacruel, but they actually pivot into their Tentacruel. I'm able to get to a Hydro because my switch timer wasn't up. Now I can get the Shadow Claw farm down, Poison Jabs are resisted. I come out with a Drill Run loaded, nearly 2, and Drill Run from this range on a Weezing with no shields is more than enough to KO, and we're able to take that win. Okay, into the, I think, second to last battle of the video, we've got a Malamar on the lead. How do I like to play this one? I like to farm up to back-to-back Hydros, because that's the same time that they get to back-to-back superpowers. So you're gonna notice I throw as soon as I get to back-to-back, but unfortunately my opponent doesn't throw. However, that means that I'm able to get to two Hydros off before they're even able to get one move off, which means they're forced to burn a shield before I have even taken any damage or had to make a shield decision. They full send a superpower that connects. It does not do very much damage, and then they pivot into a Tentacruel. We are able to respond fast enough and come in with our Sandslash, which is super nice because this is an extremely dominant matchup for the Alolan Sandslash. Poison Jabs being double resisted, Scald not enough to two-shot, so we can always overfarm in this matchup and play to the CMP tie and go for the Drill Run in order to KO. And if they decide to shield this up, we still don't need to shield because 2 will not KO. They come back with the Malamar, they lose track of my energy, they allow me to get to an Ice Punch, which is massive, and then at this point I throw 1 and I catch as soon as they get to back-to-back superpowers again. Did we catch a superpower? We did not. My opponent did bait, unfortunately, but once again it's double poison in the back, so we are in an extremely dominant position here. They're going to go for the Brutal Swing. Brutal Swing bait does grab our shield, but now we can just let the second one go, and at this point we are just going to overfarm, go for the Earthquake before they're able to make it to another Brutal Swing. This will be enough to KO unless they decide to use that last shield. Just kidding, they don't have a shield, I'm lying, and unfortunately they can't make it to back-to-back moves before I'm able to make it to an Aerial Ace, so we are able to take that win. Into the final match of the video, I believe we have a Steelix on the lead. Now, this is an awkward lead. We'd love to see this on our GLISCOR, but unfortunately we cannot. The good thing about Steelix is it's usually paired with something like a Golisopod and either like a Jellicent or something of the likes. It's usually got water in the back, but we do pivot into our Sandslash. We actually bait out a Feraligatr, so there's one of your waters. Fortunately for us, it's not a Golisopod, because Golisopod would absolutely wall our moveset here. And you might be wondering why I didn't come in with GLISCOR, and that's because GLISCOR is obviously weak to water. So I was wondering if I could flip switch, then I might be able to at least align my GLISCOR onto the Steelix and then put my Feraligatr onto a water, so at least that's a neutral matchup. And what is that Pokemon in the back? It is the Golisopod, so my opponent actually made a pretty fatal error there. They should have come in with their Golisopod against the Sandslash, but that actually allows us to flip switch against the Feraligatr. We can get to potentially 2, ooh, not quite able to get to 2 Ice Punches, so I should have gone for a Drill Run there. And at this point I'm in a pretty awkward situation because they have so much energy and I can't really afford to shield, so I just eat the X-Scissor. They switch at the same time we switch. We cannot shield anything from this Steelix. Psychic Fangs will not hurt. We have to just go for the full farm down because we need to basically come out with 3 moves loaded for this Golisopod. We need to be able to outpace, and they basically already have 2 moves loaded. So look, we farm to 100 energy. That's 2.5 Aerial Aces. We are going to lose CMP here. So we are just going to have to shield this up, but we do still have one more shield in our back pocket. Aerial Ace will grab a shield from my opponent, throwing one in the move on the next one, and then now it's a pacing game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to farm up to the Aerial Ace. I go for the catch because that would just kind of cover if they made it to back and they needed to throw, and they do not, which means now I can just go for the Aerial Ace, farm down with the Sand attacks, and we're able to take that win. So yeah, that is GLISCOR in the Ultra League. It really doesn't play that much like Gligar did in the Great League long ago. However, I do think it's a really valuable safe swap in the Ultra League, and I think it's pretty under considered, I guess. Its typing is really unique, and that's what makes it stand out. Being a flyer that resists electric, it kind of core breaks a lot of teams, and that's really valuable. And so does Sandslash, and especially the two in the back, just working together against these poisons make them super strong. And then for Alligator, you know this Pokemon, it's absolutely insane. So thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, peace.